Second sample we took to another pathologist, and the actual pathology slide of that sample is shown up on the screen, and there's this massive material at the bottom of the bottom section of the screen, which was first difficult to identify until we had a particular type of pathologist to examine it. And he says, this looks to me like a piece of a blood sample that has intermixed with it traumatised tissue. It's tissue that's been traumatised through like severe beating, and it has traumatised the skin and intermeshed with the blood. And of course, again, this is from a plaster statue. It's almost taken on human characteristics because it has cried, it has bled, it has wounds consistent with some sort of adverse treatment, some battering. And it also has blood which has characteristics which don't follow normal, not the normal results we get from examining the blood of a person. Of course, we have to ask ourselves the question, we're talking about a plaster statue, not a human person. This plaster statue has taken on the attributes of a human being. But science has no explanation for how a plaster statue can be producing these human characteristics. So I don't think there's been a modern case or any case in history which has been studied as much as this statue and has given as much for science to probe as this statue. But it's the blood that we're particularly interested in, and the characteristics it has, and that forms the link to the next story that I want to tell you briefly about. Mike Willis and I were asked if we would assist this professor in examining a case in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And the story is that this priest, Father Pazet, found in his church after Mass an abandoned communion host. Now, normally the protocol is if the host falls on the floor of the church, the priest will consume it, but if it's dirty, they'll normally put it into a bowl, allow the host to dissolve, and then do something with it that's more sacred than just throwing it away. And in this case, the priest put the bowl into a tabernacle and locked the tabernacle. And then in 2 or 3 days, he opened up the tabernacle and noticed that a blood-like substance had begun to come from the host, and that was photographed. And you'll see there it was, just probably about 8 or so days afterwards, and there it is from a side view. You can still see the host visible with the transformation occurring around it. And then a few days later, 6th of September, you can see that the blood has increased in quantity, and there it is from the side. Quite a significant transformation from the host that existed a matter of 3 weeks beforehand. And so the Cardinal of the city gave permission for us to carry out an examination of this. That was in 1999, some 3 years after the event. And the interviews were taken of the various priests involved, and there was how it was in 1999 when we were permitted to take a tiny piece away for examination. There you see the severing of the piece for examination. There's the piece we took away. We were given complete freedom to do whatever tests that we wanted to on this. We weren't in any way directed by the church to do it. It was to be an independent examination, and then our report was to be given back to the church after that examination was complete. The first tests that were done were DNA tests. And interestingly, again, the DNA test showed that there was the presence of human DNA, but it would not yield the genetic profile of the author. So we had a second case where there was something special about the blood. Also, they found that there was the evidence of both flesh and blood in this sample. And we then had to identify what that flesh was. There you see, if anyone's conversant with pathology, you can see there how our sample looked. It didn't look exactly like normal cardiac muscle, but we eventually found out why. We went to a forensic pathologist in the United States, New York. He was told nothing about the story, and he wanted to know, of course, what we're looking at. And we said, no, it's important for you to do this as a blind test. So Mike and I were there, watching him look down that microscope, awaiting his answer, and he says, I can tell you exactly what this is. This flesh is part of the muscle of the heart. It's the muscle that gives the heart its beat and the body its life. And he says, I can see infiltrated through this tissue white blood cells. And that tells me two things. That this heart was alive at this moment, the moment that this sample was taken. And also those white blood cells go to address injury. So this heart has suffered. Then he ventured further and he says, this is the sort of thing I see in people who have been, or in patients that I've seen, who have been beaten severely around the chest. Now, you can imagine that. This man is giving to us a story through this microscope that's consistent with one we're familiar with.